Good evening to our supporters in Europe and Africa. Good afternoon to our supporters in the Western Hemisphere. Good very early morning to supporters in the Pacific Rim. Welcome to a very special Angry Astronaut, one we haven't been doing in a while, unfortunately, and it's something that absolutely needs to change here in terms of the frequency of how we do these things. But it is a members-only live stream where we'll be talking to our awesome supporters and some discussion, some just an open forum again, but with a much smaller audience. If you are watching this recorded, I'm getting some. I'm not sure what it is. It could be. We're gonna go ahead and adjust down the mic here because I think that's why we're getting that little whine. There we go. So here we are, and looking forward to hearing from all of you. So yeah, let's just get the discussion started. Who wants to talk first? And once again, if you're watching this recorded, it means that just so you know that this is a supporter only discussion. And if you'd like to be part of the next one, support the channel on Patreon is usually the easiest way to do that. You're automatically enrolled in Discord no matter what level you choose. Even at the $3 level, you're included as a Discord supporter. So yeah, let's hear it. Do anybody wants to be the first up on the stage?
Yeah, I've got a question.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, out of the up and coming nuclear sort of propulsion systems, which one do you think is going to be most likely to actually make it to orbit and be used?
I would say, in my opinion, I think Pulsar Fusion has the best shot. And the reason I say that is because they're getting a lot of their work done without having to do any actual nuclear tests, anything that involves radiation or anything that involves, having to reserve one of these nuclear test sites, which right now are not allowing any tests to go on. Whereas, Pulsar Fusion can create plasma in their huge vacuum tubes that they have here without having to do actual fission type reaction to create fusion. They can do it in other ways through hydrogen 3 fusion or helium 3 actually fusion. So that being the case, it's in the next stage, assuming they can actually create the plasma in the laboratory. The next stage is to take it to space. So given how few hurdles they actually have to jump before they do their first tests in space, I'm giving them a pretty good shot at this.
Good. So is theirs based? So it's a nuclear thermal one in essence, is it?
No, Pulsar Fusion. It's a fusion propulsion system. That doesn't mean that you need a proper fusion reactor to make it work. All you need is a fusion process to create plasma, and you don't have to get a positive power reaction out of it. You don't need to get energy out of it. You just need to create plasma, and we create plasma in the laboratory all the time. And high energy ionized plasma controlled by electromagnets, and the plasma is what provides the thrust, not the energy you're getting out of the fusion reaction.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
So keep an eye on it.
Yeah, it's very interesting stuff.
Thank you.
Okay, here comes Mike. Okay, waiting for Mike to come up on stage. Once again, for those of you who aren't aware, for those who are watching the recorded piece of this, Pulsar Fusion is a British advanced propulsion company. They're developing this fusion propulsion system. They're based in Milton Keynes, which is where I live. So yeah, they're very, very exciting what they're working on. Go ahead, Mike. I guess Mike may not. He may have stepped away while we gave him permission to come up on stage.
Oh, here we go.
Okay,
Am I
Mike.
here?
Hey, there you are, Mike. How you
Mhm.
doing?
Yeah. How you doing?
Great.
I understand that one plasma is not just hot metal, hot energy. It's also lightning. Also creates plasma. Actually,
Yes.
lightning is plasma.
Yes.
So actually, anything that can create a a high a high G lightning is considered plasma.
Correct. And so
So
what the thing of it is a fusion reaction, the plasma that comes out of that is much more energetic because you can get plasma in an ion engine too. We use plasma in tradition in ion engines that go on a lot of interplanetary probes and things like that. But the thing of it is the ISP and the thrust created by that kind of plasma is very, very low. The thrust is the equivalent of putting a piece of paper on the spaceship.
that's for magnetic field. If it's
Right.
if, if it's flowing through an intense magnetic field, it actually intensifies it.
Right. But with fusion, you're using a helium-3 fusion process. The plasma that comes out of that reaction is extremely energetic, ionized obviously, but also energetic, which is why the when it flows out through the nozzle at the speed is approximately 250 kilometers per second is what that plasma gets, as opposed to 4.5 kilometers per second for a conventional rocket engine. Or with ion engines, the speed is more along the lines of maybe 20 kilometers per second at best. And again, not a lot of thrust. Whereas with a fusion reaction, you get enough plasma all at once in order to get a lot of thrust, and also that the plasma is traveling at a very, very high speed compared to our ion
I
engines.
saw that an experiment where they used energized mercury, liquid mercury, to create a magnetic field.
Oh wow! It creates a magnetic field, huh? That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's very intriguing. I'll have to ask Richard if they're doing that. By the way, Richard Dinan is the president of that organization, and he was on a reality show that has absolutely nothing to do with science or engineering or space or anything like that. It's called Made in Chelsea. And you can tell that he'd be the kind of guy to be on a show like that, because if you see my interviews with him, he looks like he jumped off of a GQ magazine. He is like ridiculously well groomed and good looking. And it is weird to think that a guy who looks like him is heading up an organization like that. And by the way, he hates anybody even mentioning that he has that background. But nevertheless, just a great guy. Great guy.
Hey, thanks, Jordan.
Sure. Yes, that's correct. Just to be clear, producer just reminded me, and that this absolutely, we need to make sure we know about this, is Richard Dinan started Pulsar before he even appeared on Made in Chelsea. And like I say, I mean, Made in Chelsea was just such a tiny little thing for him compared to the importance of what he's doing with Pulsar. So that's why he always wants to be associated with Pulsar rather than Made in Chelsea. All right. So, do we have any other comments? Or Mike, appreciate the conversation. Do we have anybody else ready to come up? We got some people in the audience. Oh, we got Damian who wants to make a comment. Sorry, ASN stepped away for a second. Go ahead, Damian. Yep, Damian, you can come up on the stage now. There you go. How are things in the west of Ireland? Yeah, you're muted currently, Damian. Assuming you're, I'm assuming it. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, have you got me now?
I do indeed. How you doing?
Good, good, good. A little bit damp here in the wild west of Ireland, but all good otherwise. My question for you, can you explain to us more about this spectacular meteor shower we're expecting possibly expecting in a few years? There's an asteroid that's potentially going to hit the moon. I think
Right.
it's a 4% chance, last I heard. I think it's YR4 or 24.
2024 YR4, yeah.
Yeah, can you tell us a bit more about that and the potential impacts on our satellites?
Sure. What I was shocked
In
about.
particular, GPS satellites.
Sure. The GPS may not be hit as bad, but they could be. The thing that shocks me, the thing that really has shocked me for a while, when the idea of that asteroid hitting the moon was just being talked about, this cool thing. Oh, and astronomers were saying how neat it's going to be. Maybe that we'll be able to see how these craters are formed on the moon. We can actually watch the process in detail, etc. And I kept saying, what the hell are you talking about? This could be a real problem. And of course, I wasn't basing this on my own knowledge. Instead, it was more based on a study that was carried out by an Arizona State University astronomy grad student who researched. The reason he researched this topic is back in the Middle Ages, back I believe in the 1200s, at Canterbury University. There were a number of monks who were looking up at the sky at night, or is actually the just as the sun had gone down, was a little bit of twilight and such, and all of a sudden this massive flash erupted from the moon, so they said. And they reported it in detail, etc. And it was theorized from the 1970s until the early 2000s that there was a specific crater, and I forget the name of the crater that is on that side of the moon where the flash was observed. That's fairly recent. That could maybe have been dug as recently as the High Middle Ages when this supposedly took place. But then this grad student didn't buy that and did some research on it and discovered that if that had happened, it would have thrown out so much debris that the amount of debris that would have been in turn captured by our gravity a few days later would have created the most spectacular meteor storm in human history, and it would have affected the whole planet. And so we should have had Chinese astronomers or somebody reporting on this unbelievable, and we're talking thousands of meteors per minute, 100 per second, that kind of thing. I mean, just an enormous frequency of meteors streaking through the atmosphere. Not a lot of them impacting or anything, but still this huge light show. And nothing was ever reported by anybody throughout the planet, and it should have. So that was the argument of this student, saying that this shouldn't have happened. There's no way this happened at that time. And so that's, I read that a while ago, and it's like, wait a minute, this is going to happen if this other asteroid hits, because it may not create a crater as big as the one we were just talking about, but it's still going to be, an 8 megaton explosion, and not like a nuclear explosion, like a deep crater being dug and millions and millions of tons of debris getting thrown out by that. And since the moon's gravity is 1/6 that of Earth, there's a considerable portion of that debris that will escape the moon's gravity and then will in turn be grabbed by the Earth's gravity. Unless the asteroid were to impact on the far side, or the so-called dark side of the moon, faces away from us, it would be less likely to produce enough debris. The direction of the debris is important. However, a study was implemented just a couple of weeks ago, as for those of you who've seen my video on the topic. And the astronomers who researched it have a pretty good idea where this asteroid is going to hit if it does indeed hit the moon. And it's going to hit the near side. It's going to hit our side of the moon. And so therefore, we're talking 100 million tons of debris, 100 million tons worth of debris. And their estimate is as much as 10% of that could end up being captured by Earth's gravity. So we're talking 10 million tons of debris being dragged down into our atmosphere, but more importantly, being dragged through all of the orbits of our satellites. And the estimate is we're looking at hundreds to thousands of impacts on our satellites, especially given how many satellites there's likely to be by 2032. And hundreds to thousands of impacts on those satellites will create a lot of clouds of debris in orbit in addition to what's already there, and will almost definitely start the Kessler syndrome. The Kessler syndrome being a chain reaction that destroys all of our satellites in orbit, and not only destroys our satellite network and throws our economy into a tailspin, but also creates this halo of debris surrounding our planet that essentially seals us into on our own world for probably the next 50 to 100 years. So the consequences of this thing hitting the moon are very severe indeed, at least potentially. And so we should really be watching this thing. And if there's any chance of it hitting the moon, we need to prepare to try to knock it off its course. It's not going to be cool or exciting to watch this thing dig a crater on the moon and throw all that debris our way. As I say, none of the debris probably will hit the Earth. It's not going to be a threat to anybody on the ground, but the consequences to our satellites, our economy, and everything else would be arguably worse than an asteroid hitting the Earth. All right. Damian's coming back up.
Yeah, bear with me. I think I'm back with you now again.
Yes, you are.
Thank you very much for explaining that to us. So 2032 is the expected year.
It is.
The percentage chance last I heard was 4%.
4.3. 4.3.
4.3. Okay. But then okay, the Kessler syndrome I'm well aware of, and yes, this is a big fear. But if it's not as bad as the Kessler syndrome and it takes out just a few, the GPS satellites, rather than our communication satellites like Starlink and whatever else might be up there at the time, are the GPS higher up? I'm not sure of this.
They're much higher. They're in a much higher orbit.
But
However,
they're likely to be hit first.
they would still be subjected to the debris. However, since there aren't as many of them, the odds of them getting hit are less, just because there's not
Right.
as many satellites to hit. But still, they would be threatened. There's no question. They would be
Right.
threatened.
Thank you very much for that. If
Sure.
you have somebody else lined up, I'll leave you to it.
All right. Well, ready to talk to somebody else if you're. But yeah, I am very happy, thrilled, in fact, that somebody decided to take the whole thing seriously, and I mean somebody who actually had a degree in this topic and did a study on it and discovered the truth about it. By the way, the fellow who did it, I'm forgetting his name. The fellow who did it was the same guy who came out with a study after I started talking about the possibility of Apophis going off course, a small impact, or even a small meteor, or even a relatively medium-sized one that we don't know is there, making a close approach to Apophis and its gravity deflecting it slightly. Any small shift in its trajectory could result in an impact on Earth, which is why I find the NASA completely ruling out the possibility of an impact in 2029 as being irresponsible. And interestingly enough, this very same guy did a study on that and determined that the odds of an impact were indeed higher than what NASA was saying, because of the possibility of an unseen rock hitting Apophis or even making a close approach and deflecting it back on a collision course. Ready for another conversation if you like. I cannot keep earbuds in to save my life. All right, well, let me go ahead and continue to talk. I want to make sure that I'm clear about my opinions about Starship, because I know ever since I kind of came out and said I no longer believe what I said I believed in the past, my views have changed about Starship. I want to be 100% clear that I haven't given up on Starship completely or anything like that. I still think Starship potentially has an enormous amount of use. I think it's promising. There are some very intelligent and well-respected engineers who used to work for NASA who are now, like Gerstenmaier, Bill Gerstenmaier, for example, who are working on Starship. I do not believe that Bill Gerstenmaier would willingly work on a lie or a scam project or something that he knew couldn't work. That's not him. So I believe that it has promise still. I just question whether or not it's going to carry humans. I really am wondering whether or not it's ever going to be that safe. Pardon? Starship. Yeah, maybe a mini Starship. Something smaller, lighter, doesn't carry as many people, but something along those lines might not be bad. But yeah, and I'm not sure if making the rocket bigger, a version 3, or whatever, is going to improve the situation. Bigger means heavier, not necessarily better. And I continue to wonder about the whole notion of making such a heavy second stage to begin with. Second stage of Starship is utterly colossal. We talk about the comparisons, between Starship and Saturn V. Starship having twice the thrust of Saturn V. But that upper stage of Starship is ridiculously heavy compared to the upper stage of even if you add the second and the third stage of Saturn V plus the Apollo capsule and the LEM and everything else, even all of those combined doesn't begin to add up to anything close to Starship. All of those were very, very lightweight. And again, the reason they were so lightweight is the Silovsky rocket equation. It's very unforgiving. The whole principles behind that, it doesn't encourage heavy stuff in your upper stages of your rocket. You can have heavy stuff in the first stage, although keeping your rocket as lightweight as possible is always a good idea. But the first stage, you can get away with it. You have your second stage really, really heavy, and that can be a problem. And I will die on this hill. I continue to argue that maybe Elon should have gone with stainless steel starships when he was doing his initial development, but the end game should be carbon fiber. I still think that that's in order for Starship to carry the payload that it's supposed to carry, I think it needs to get lighter, and I think carbon fiber could do the job. Once again, thrilled to talk to any of you. If you'd like to jump up on stage, if not, that's cool. Or if there's any chat, again, I can't see the chat. Can you, ASN? Okay, no chat so far. But once again, be thrilled to answer any further questions. I'm happy to continue ranting also, but in any event, this whole thing is all about giving the supporters an opportunity to talk to me. Oh, Mike's coming up. Looks like Mike might be or did he? Yeah. Mike's here. Hey, Mike.
Yeah. Here.
Yep. Let's go.
Yeah, there was a discussion about possibly altering Starship upper stage into a 2-stage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it would be a 3.
Yep. Good
so
idea.
That that's what I was thinking, because I believe that the personnel, the crew cabin should be carbon fiber, because it would make it as lighter than necessary. Even though the lower stage where the engines are can still be steel,
Right.
Which is connecting to the heat shield for better protection from heat shield. But the upper stage personnel stage would be carbon fiber.
Yep, the Robert Zubrin, as I'm sure, and I think you've probably seen my videos on the topic, the mini Starship idea, the idea of putting a smaller crew-rated vehicle into the fairing of Starship. And then if you were to do that, and again, make it out of carbon fiber, etc., with its own propulsion system, etc., then you don't have to, then the upper stage of Starship doesn't necessarily need to even get all the way to orbit. It can just get far enough to help to put the third stage in orbit. And of course, I'm going to switch these around.
What about making the upper stage, that mini Starship, the emergency escape ship as a stage 3? Emergency escape.
Right. Yeah. That's true. It can be used for an emergency escape purpose as well. But the less you have that you ask that upper stage to do, if it doesn't have to do everything, all it has to do is just to get that third stage up. Then you don't have to work it as hard. You don't have to. The propulsion system can be a little less ambitious. You just put less stress on the entire setup if you have a third stage. So yeah, I mean, the third stage for Starship's been discussed many times, and really, I think you're right, Mike. I think adding that third stage to where and with its own propulsion system and all that. Would really take a lot of stress off of that second stage. And it may be one of the things that's causing the second stage to fail so much is because it's being asked to do so much. It's being asked to take all that cargo plus as heavy as it is all the way up to orbit. And it's may not be able to do it. Okay, we're about to run out of time here, but Damian, go ahead, please.
Okay, one more question for you.
Sure.
On that topic. I guess you can call me a Starship fanboy, but I'm not going to get a tattoo.
Sure.
The theory of using what's available to us at the moment to get to the moon, 3 different providers using 3 different parts of it. I don't know how much you know about this, or I only heard about it today and I like the idea. Using Starship's booster, super heavy booster, to do the heavy lift, using ULA's, what's the upper stage?
Centaur 5.
Centaur 5, yes.
Mm-hmm.
To on top, and on top of that again, then using Blue Origin's Blue Moon, is that what they call it?
Yep, that was America's Space that wrote an article on that topic, and then I made a video about that article. I think that's a hell of an idea. Use the part of Starship that's currently working well anyway, which is the super heavy booster, and use that. Of course, you use the upper stage too, but then you're using an expendable Starship to push the stack consisting of Centaur 5 and the Blue Moon lander. And as you can get that thing into orbit, as long as you can get that entire stack into orbit, which is about 100 metric tons, is how much. Actually, it's a little over 100 metric tons between a fully fueled Centaur 5 and a fully fueled Blue Origin Blue Moon human rated lander. It's a little more than 100 tons. However, if you take off the heat shield off of the upper stage of Starship and take off the fins and flaps and all that, essentially a lunar Starship that's expendable. And then it should be able to put that, it's 107 metric tons total, I believe, for that entire stack. And you put that up there, and then if Centaur 5, if all of its fuel and its 4 RL-10 engines can be dedicated just to get to TLI, that's the only purpose it serves, it can do it. It can push a fully fueled Blue Origin Blue Moon lander all the way out, which means we don't have to wait for Blue Origin to come out with their cislunar transporter. The Centaur 5 can do the job, gets the Blue Moon out there, and then SLS plus Orion takes the crew out to orbit and then transfers them over to the Blue Moon lander. And Bob's your uncle. There you go. It's done. So yeah, when I read it at America's Space, I thought that was a hell of an idea, and I continue to think it's a hell of an idea. I think we stand a much better chance of succeeding and beating China to the moon with that solution than with Lunar Starship.
My thoughts exactly as well. Thank you very much.
Sure, of course.
That's using what's workable at the moment. And as you said, that race is ongoing, and we'd have a chance of getting there ahead.
Yep. That's
We,
what we'll,
I'm of course I'm in Ireland, but anyway,
I don't know. We're the West, though. I mean,
we're the
China
exactly
gets there first. China sets a base up on the moon first and starts mining the moon first. They will achieve a monopoly on rare metals and rare earths that are plentiful up there that they already have a monopoly on. You know, the Western world stands a chance of breaking that monopoly if we can exploit those minerals. But if China, you know, stakes their claim and gets access to the best quality mining opportunities, then we're screwed again. And we can't allow that. Just can't allow that.
agreed.
Great. Thanks. Appreciate it, Damian.
Thank you very much, Angry.
All right, folks. That was 32 minutes. Really appreciate everybody joining us today. That was a very, very enjoyable conversation. Once again, if you're watching this recorded, you can be part of these episodes by joining Patreon. You get an automatic Discord membership, which also gives you access to lots of exclusive content, etc. That's as little as $3 a month. Not a bad investment. But once again, want to thank my supporters very much for joining me today. And until next time, stay angry about space.